Good morning. A couple of announcements to get us started. First of all, 50% of you said midnight is the time you want things due. Another 20% of you said 10 p.m. So midnight it is. Last call for your compare and contrast paper that is due Tuesday at noon. If you do not turn it in, I will just go into your document, see what you have, and grade that. It is because grades are due for progress reports on Wednesday. Also, I have updated video chatting hours. I will talk about that a little bit more at the end. As we move on, we are working on the exact same standards as yesterday. Theme, poetic elements. We're annotating poetry to figure it out. So you will be doing some poem reading and analysis. We'll talk about what your final project is, and then you will need to find a poem. You will probably also need to finish up your stanza, which is due tonight at midnight. So a couple of things as we go. You are on pages 11 through 16 in our packet. Let's turn to page 11. I am going to give you some time to annotate your poem. You are reading the poem Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. I want you to focus especially on trying to figure out the rhyme, and don't forget the summary of each stanza. As you remember from other lessons, you are annotating for things like simile, personification, metaphor, etc. And then you are working on the discussion questions. Feel free to take 5 to 10 minutes to work on this. All right, let's read our poem. Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wondrest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. All right. Discussion question number 1 says label the rhyme scheme, and I'm going to use my notes to talk you through this. So day and May rhyme. So since day is the first time it's happening, you start with the first letter of the alphabet, A. Temperate does not rhyme with day, so it gets a B. As I said before, May and day do rhyme, so that gets an A. Date and temperate rhyme, that gets a B. At least they would have in Shakespeare's time. So you'll see that every other line in this poem rhymes. So we go to C, D, E, F, and then the very last 2 lines are in a couplet form, and they also rhyme, so they get a G, G. Let's talk alliteration. You see all the purple marks? Those are examples of alliteration. So fair from fair, that F sound. In the next line, chance, changing, course, the C sound. Next line, summer, shall. A couple at the very at the very end, we have the L and the TH sound. Long lives this, life, thee. So a lot of the same sounds to make the flow of the poem a little bit better, the rhythm of the poem a little bit better. Next up, we have a metaphor. The whole poem is an extended metaphor. That has to do with number 4. Shakespeare uses the whole poem to compare a person to a summer's day. So I put a box around the metaphor. Moving on to some personification. It says, the eye of heaven shines. Heaven doesn't have an eye. And then it says, his gold complexion. Complexion is your face. The eye of heaven, the sun, a little bit of symbolism there, does not have a face. That is personification. We have another example of personification down here where it talks about death and it says his shade. If it was talking about it as an inanimate object, it would have been using the pronoun its. So it's giving life to the idea of death. That is ironic there. Probably one of the harder parts of this poem is the imagery because of the word choice. Some of the words we don't know. We don't know that the word fair means to be not like just and fine in this instance. Fair means beautiful. So when it says the sun, his gold complexion dimmed, that is some imagery because what dims the face of the sun? Clouds. So you have to read really deeply to understand exactly what is going on. So throughout the poem, for question number 2, he describes this man better than nature. We'll go to the next slide for that. You can see my summaries. More beautiful than a summer's day. Sometimes summer is too hot or cloudy. Days aren't always perfect. Talking about how his beauty, this person in the poem, it won't fade. And the reason it won't fade is because this poem is going to keep on living. And this poem is talking all about the person's beauty. So we've answered some of the other questions. As we go to the lovely handout. So the man is better than nature because he's more lovely, he's more temperate, he's better weather. He's not too hot, he's not cloudy, he's not too short of a day or too windy. The last 2 lines where it says, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this poem. This poem gives life to thee. Basically, this man will live forever. His beauty will live forever because this poem lives forever. And throughout the poem, it is comparing this man's beauty to a summer's day. So now we're going to talk about what your big project for poetry is. You are going to take a poem and analyze it and present it to class. What you have been doing on the stanza is like just a glimpse at what your final presentation is going to be. So let's start looking at some of the details. Your rubric for this is going to be on page 39 of your packet. So you have a bunch of different things. I'm going to click through these things so you can start to see that in a little bit more depth. But to help you out with this assignment, the assignment is overviewed on pages 13 and 14. Poetry website links for you to find poems are in Google Classroom under important information. Like I said, the rubric is on page 39. I made an example for you based on one of the poems we have read. That is William Wordsworth's As I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. That example is in paper form, is on pages 15 and 16. I also made that presentation and put it in Google Classroom under important information. So what you are going to do, and this you can use either page 12, 13, or 20. It's put in the packet multiple times just to make sure you understand. You are going to have to try and find a poem that you want to do a presentation about. I want you to try 5 poems out before you decide what your poem will be. You will put your poem in the poem choice document of Google Classroom. That is going to be due Tuesday at midnight. Looking for a poem that is at least 15 lines long and has figurative language, because otherwise you will not be successful on the figurative language part of this slide presentation. For the rest of the day, you're working on your stanza presentation about the poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death. And then on your own, you are reading poetry in hopes of finding your poem. Your poem that you are choosing has to be something that I will allow you to do. You have to make that choice by Tuesday at midnight, or I will make that choice for you. Use the poetry websites to look for those poems. I want to give you a picture of where we are going. On Monday, we weren't supposed to have school, so I gave you an optional extra credit activity. It will be posted Monday morning. Do it, don't do it, your choice. Tuesday, your poem needs to be chosen by midnight. If you want to turn in your paper for a last chance, that is turned in by noon. Only if you haven't turned it in yet. I'm hoping to get all of those papers graded before Friday at 5. On Wednesday, you're going to have a practice annotation quiz to see how are you doing with all these skills that we have been working on. Grades are due for progress reports on that day. Thursday, you are going to take that poem you chose and start annotating it for your presentation. On Friday, you're going to start learning about the poet who wrote that poem and researching their life for your presentation. I put this slide back up so you remember what your big task is working for today. First thing, finish up your stanza presentation, either alone or with your partners. Second thing, start reading poems so that you have a poem that you want to work on for your big project, which is a presentation of the poem you choose. Looking at figurative language, who the author was, looking at the author's life and how that impacted his poem, writing a theme statement, finding a piece of famous artwork that connects with the theme statement and a works cited. But right now, what you are doing after you finish your stanza presentation is finding a poem with figurative language that you want to do your presentation on. I will see you